All right, everybody. Hello, hello. You see us right now, but I'm briefly going to show you just so that you know what we are doing today. We are having a guest, a special needs advocate. I always like to say special needs. What do you mean by that? Don't we all have them? But she's also an educator, an author, a songwriter, and so much more. So, hello, Mary. Do you go by Mary or Mary Elizabeth?
Either one is fine. Mary Elizabeth is my professional name. And so when I was becoming an author, there were no Mary Elizabeth, but there were Mary Jackson. So I grabbed and went with my full name.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, sometimes we have to watch out with our names if somebody else has it. I've looked myself up sometimes, and there are some other ladies who have a similar name, and it's not necessarily flattering. So I choose to be the victor in that and not go anywhere with it. But Mary, in the show, we talk about choice. And one of the things that, if I'm correct, and you tell me if I'm not, that we're doing, that you're talking about is from victim mindset to victor mindset. And the ladies here who either watch live later on Roku and all the other places, Apple TV and so forth, they always like to know a little bit about the person that I invite. So before we dive into choices, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a wife and a mom of three kiddos, and two of my kiddos are on the spectrum. So I know we touched about that for a second a few minutes ago. So they are diagnosed. My little guy has autism level 1 with sensory processing, language processing, and several other things. So my journey in that world started a long time ago. I am also an award-winning children's author. I've been in several anthologies that have gone bestsellers on Amazon. So that's been it's been empowering to be with empowering women. And I believe that is the best path for us on this planet, is empowering and supporting each other. So I love being a part of that energy of support. I also host, I'm a co-host and founder of a live stream show online called Writers Corner Live Network. We've been on for over 4 years, interviewing authors from around the world. And I've had a lot of fun with that. And I actually just launched my own podcast with a music review company, and it is a book review. It's a book podcast, but where it's more about inspirational stories and journeys of authors and things in the writing world. So it's called Cover to Cover with Mary E. Jackson. So I have 3 episodes up. I'm super excited about this journey.
Yeah.
And later today, actually, I'm interviewing Stuart Pierce, who was Princess Diana's vocal and confidence coach. And so I'm so excited to have him on. He's a soul brother of mine. And he's just a very unique individual in this world. So it's an honor to be able to talk to him. I ghostwrite and educate and, I speak, and as I'm speaking now, but I'm also a speaker. And I think as entrepreneurs, we just sometimes we wear many different hats, not all at the same time, but we do have a variety of things that we do. Yeah, I've been on this parenting journey for a long time, and it's important to me to write empowering books for children and teens and adults, and helping. For me, it's important to help kids get started with early in life with language that's positive.
Yes.
I am amazing. I am resilient. I am powerful. And you're also teaching them words that they might not learn every day in their life. So we're expanding their vocabulary. So it's kind of there's several sides to all of that. And, I think it's so important for us we do have to look ourselves in the mirror and be brave enough to take ownership of what we do in this life, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and help ourselves overcome some of those weaknesses and challenges so we make them our strengths. I think that's super important, because then we become an empowered whatever we are. If we're a parent, yes, or just if we're a wife or a husband or a caregiver or just a neighbor, even, we become more empowered in ourselves by deciding to take ownership And every moment
Yeah.
is a choice in our life too, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And wow, that's amazing. So the podcast sounds amazing, especially with your guests coming up, especially during this time.
Yeah.
However, aside from that, so you do all these things like most of us do. You said it. We all do many things, writing, what was it? Writing, live streaming, podcasting, mom, I don't know, all the things that we always do. And you also said that you're very excited. And to me, the term excited is almost another term for happy or giddy. So this is a trick question. Are
Okay.
you happy with your life right now?
Yes and no. I'm going to be honest. Okay. So I'm very happy with so many things in my life. I'm also at one of those I'm in a transition place because I have two girls, my oldest two are at college. So the second one
Mhm.
just went off and now we're adjusting, just my husband and my son and I.
Right.
And so there's nothing, I mean, of course there was unhappiness about my girls leaving because I love my kiddos so much, but I'm also in that transition period of figuring out, okay, going forward, what is in my
Hmm.
highest and best good and what will bring me
Right.
happiness?
Yes.
And where do I need to put my time and effort? And what's going to be the best benefit for me, my family, those I want to serve. And
Hmm.
so my life is filled with so much happiness, and happiness is a choice. So I love your title because it really is a choice. And that's how we learn to be resilient and go from from victim to victor is
Hmm.
making that choice to not be defined by what's happened in our lives or in the present situation, because we've all had hard times. I mean, we've all had times that take us down to our knees and make us think we can't ever get back up, right?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. So of course, I love that you just said happiness is a choice. I'm like, yay. And
Yes.
the viewers know that yeah, I don't set things up with my guests. Unfortunately, you are one of the guests that never knows what question is going to come next, but that's how we play with what is really happening, and it's not pre-scripted or anything like that. And so in that happiness, and thank you for being honest, about yes and no. So you have a number of children. I want to go down the children path
Sure.
and the path of parenthood for a moment, because um parenthood to me is like one of those things. You're never ready for it. You always question yourself, and it's the best thing that ever happened to you. That's like where I'm at, right? So it then gets a bit more complex or complicated when, for example, you have special needs involved, or when marriages end and you have to split things up, or. So there are a lot of issues when it comes to special needs. And I wasn't, by the way, joking when I said this. To me, we all have special needs. So, for me, it's like, I know how I like to learn. I think that's a special need. And, like you said, use positive words. So when it comes to the type of special needs like autism, a lot of people don't understand it. And it's very difficult to, I guess, to predict sometimes where it goes. How do you empower yourself and the kids in this instance to deal with that, to live with it, and thrive at the same time?
That's a very loaded question.
I know. I'm known for
That
those.
is because there's not one answer to that. Excuse me. It's like when somebody asks me, what do you think causes autism? There's not one thing. It's not like you stubbed your toe, you got bit by something, you had an infection. There are so many different answers to this one particular question. And and so we have to find that right ingredients, I guess, for the recipe that works for ourselves in our life with our children. For me, one of the things when I have the chance to talk to parents or others, um, I think that if there's something going on with your child and we have that instinct built inside of us, right? That's supposed to help guide us in our life. I call it our God alarm because
I like
really
that God
helps you
alarm.
to,
I like
yeah.
that. God
That's
God
what I call
alarm.
it, is my God alarm, because I
Okay.
think it's put into us. We're born with it so that we can steer through life if we can connect to it and listen to it, to go in that direction or avoid that situation or go toward that situation, right? So that's
Sorry, there
very,
was just all of a sudden there was like a big noise in the background. That's why I leaned back a little bit. I don't know what that was.
oh,
So
I don't know either. Well, there's nothing over here. I mean, a
no, it
little
was something
airplane is on.
electronic. I don't know if somebody turned something on somewhere in the internet. We're all interconnected, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
right. Um, but it's, the most empowering thing that we can do is, if your child receives a diagnosis of any kind of a challenge, even if they're born with one, the
Mhm.
greatest thing that we can do as the mother or the parent or the caregiver is to research, and to educate ourselves so that we understand what's going on, because then you have a sense of power over what's happening and you don't
Mhm.
feel like a victim. You're like, okay, so it's like when you take your child to the doctor and they have strep. So
Yes.
you're feeling helpless. Your child is sick, a fever, maybe they're throwing up, who knows what it is, and their stomach hurts and they're miserable and you want to fix it. And so you're overwhelmed with all of that, right?
Mhm.
The doctor gives you a diagnosis for a prescription of amoxicillin or whatever they put your
Oh
child
God,
on.
yes.
Then you give them the medication and it's like, okay, so now I know what they have. I apply the medication, you do all the other things you need to do for them. And then now you've been able to help your child to get better. And
Mm.
so I like to use that example for when people have those stipulations about labels. No one ever wants to hear that something's wrong with their child,
Right.
or that they may have something wrong with them, because then we start to question, what did we do wrong? How did we go wrong? What happened? And that becomes overwhelming in itself. But if you don't get your child the right diagnosis, they can't get the help that they need. And
Mhm.
I mean, I've been through two of my three children with early intervention services and therapies. So I've had two
Okay.
nonverbal kids
Yeah.
become completely verbal children. And my middle one has just gone to college for animation and filmmaking. So
Mhm.
it's as long as we're proactive with our kids and we're involved and we educate ourselves, it helps us to be a more
Right.
empowered parent, to help our children feel more
Mhm.
empowered so that they don't feel like something is wrong with them.
Right. Yeah.
It's that they just learn differently. And
Mhm.
let's figure out
Mhm.
how you learn. Let's figure out, what is easier for you. Do you need modifications in a classroom? Do you
Yeah.
need accommodations of some sort? Let's figure it out, because you're not going to learn like the little guy next to you. And that's
Mhm.
okay. There's nothing wrong with it. So I think acceptance is a very big part of it.
Mhm.
I had no idea I was going to have children with any challenges
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
We don't know. And so, and when it all happened, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. So I think that's
Mhm.
where my passion comes from, wanting to help others, because I felt so alone and so
Mhm.
isolated. And I grew up in a
Mhm.
house with a mom who has a psychology background.
Oh,
She worked in
yes.
the handicap department. That's what it was called back in the 70s at the
Mhm.
college. And so when I was in junior high and high school, it was not unusual to have people in our home who were in a wheelchair or on a walker or
Right.
cerebral palsy. That was not an unusual thing in my
Mhm.
house. It was just, it was like, oh, okay, hey, somebody's coming to dinner.
Yeah.
I grew up with that, but didn't know it some way I would be affected by, my children would have challenges in their life. And
Mhm.
so I just, first of all, you have to listen to your instinct, that God alarm inside of you. So if you think something's going on with your child, you have to check it out. You have to
Mhm.
ask those questions. You have to keep going until you find a doctor who's perfect for your child and will
Right.
listen to you, because you're their advocate. So advocacy starts the moment we get pregnant.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Here's a question for you. And again, I never know where this goes. So if you choose not to answer, that's fine too. But I remember when I was pregnant, and that was when I was still in the US. And in the US, there, how should I put it? I find them extremely careful when you're pregnant, especially if you're maybe a little older already when you're pregnant.
Mhm.
And so they did this thing with the long needle to make sure the kid is all right. And at that point, I was wondering, and I think that's a question when it comes to advocacy right from the moment that you get pregnant, right? What if they now say, for me, it was never a question, okay? I was pregnant, I was going to have the baby. There was no question. However, they do these tests to then say, oh, your child may be blah, 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 blah. What do you think about that? Because right then there's a label being put on a not yet born human being, right?
Right. So, that's really tough because that happened to me in my third pregnancy with my son. I had him very late in life. So they had
Yeah.
prepared us. He had stopped growing in utero. So I had
Mhm.
what's called intrauterine growth restriction. There's like
Yes.
200,000 cases a year.
Mhm.
And so they had prepared us that he might have brain damage and not walk. And
Mhm.
that was a very intense 6 weeks until his birth
Yes.
of every 2 days with a specialist, measurements. So
Mhm.
it was a very high stress pregnancy in the end.
Yes.
When he came out,
Which also affects the baby, right? If the mom's stressed.
oh my goodness, yes. And so at the end, he actually came out. He's a complete miracle as far as I'm concerned. He never went to the NICU. He was fine from the visual, like he
Mhm.
couldn't swallow when he was born. And there were some other issues, but it was nothing like what they had predicted. And
Right.
so I had done a lot of praying, of course. And I believe he was a miracle in the sense of what he already conquered that had been, what is the word that I'm looking for? That had already been spoken over him, right? So
Okay.
he'd already
Yes.
conquered
Yes.
that.
Yes. Right.
And even at 44, I chose not to have the test that you're talking about. I chose to do what they offered me was blood work. And then
Mhm.
if there was something that was amiss, I would have gone further.
Mhm.
I think it's up to the individual whether they want to know or not. Now, sometimes when we're, pregnant, it's obvious of a diagnosis that we see on the ultrasound. And
Right.
there's really nothing you can do about that. But no doctor can ever be 100% sure because people are given diagnosis all the time in utero and then the baby turns out fine, or they
Mhm.
were not given the diagnosis and a child comes out with a challenge.
Right.
So it's up
Yeah.
to each of us how we deal with it, right? And
Mhm.
it's a mom and dad, or mom and mom, dad, whoever has the baby, it's their choice,
Right.
how they're going to pursue further with it.
Mhm.
If they want to know,
Mhm.
if they don't want to know, so I think that the most empowering thing that we can do is learn about if your child does have, I knew we would be facing some challenges with my little guy. I just didn't
Right.
know what. So I
Yeah.
felt kind of helpless. And at that point, I completely surrendered. I just surrendered because I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't
Mhm.
worry myself to pieces over it before he even came into this world because I was already dealing with enough stress hormones.
Right.
you know?
Yes. Yes. So what it seems like to me, and this is a very deep and very complicated issue. So I know that I just went there. So thank you.
It's
But
okay.
it seems to me that you chose love,
Mm,
right?
yes.
From the
Yes.
moment that you knew you were pregnant, and then the hype about all the things that could happen, especially if you're over 40 in the US. It's like, and I have to put it like that because I've seen other countries, there's not that much, but and all the things you can't eat, but you just said no, you know, my child, love. And now you're dealing with it. So I think the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I think that initial choice, if it's steadfast, is really, really important. So if we choose love in the beginning, then everything else, even the challenges, may not be as bad.
Mm.
Versus if we're already on the brink or somebody says, well, should you really, all the problems, etc., etc. So how do you arrive at that first choice? Because you work on advocacy and empowering others. How do you work on that first choice that can be sort of the guideline for what comes next?
Wow.
Sorry, I'm not going deep.
No. It's a big question because it's going to be different for everyone. I'll give you an example of one of my girlfriends. She is an international photographer. Her focus is photographing children and folks with Down syndrome. She travels all over the country. So when her child was, they got the diagnosis in utero, and then her daughter was born, the husband left because he could not handle it. So she's been a single mother for 8 years now, and she loves her daughter to pieces, and her daughter is precious. She goes to school with my son. And so she chose love. He chose to leave. And so that was so important, that was so important for HG, I'll call her, in this life and what she represents. Because what my girlfriend has done now is she's gone and she takes these absolutely unbelievable pictures of these kiddos, and you see nothing but the beauty about them. It's just, and she celebrates it. And so when we take something like that and we go, hey, so this is happening here with my child, it's still okay. It's still okay. And we need to honor, we're not a country that keeps children with disabilities and challenges in the back room that nobody ever sees them, because that still goes on today in 2022, which I think is horrific. But what we do is celebrate them wherever they're at in this life. That is the choice that we have to make for them to be empowered. Because if you tell them something's wrong with them, they believe you about themselves until they're old enough to make their own interpretations and decisions about who they are. So from the get-go, you act like something's wrong, you tell them something's wrong, they're defective or less than, then you're putting a broken person into the world. Okay. Their challenge is only a challenge because the world says it is. It doesn't mean it's a challenge. God created everything, right? All of us. So
and God doesn't make mistakes. I'm sorry.
I know, right? So if you're a parent who has a child, if we think about it like this, I think they're gifts. And I think that part of the gift of it is that it forces you to look outside the box. If you have a child that's born that's blind, what do you have to do? You have to learn the world through the eyes, if you want to say, of your blind child. So you learn how to really tune into your senses. You learn how to see the world a different way, how to feel the world a different way. What a blessing that is. If you didn't have that child born blind, you wouldn't probably never engage in the way that you do with that child. So what an honor that and gift that is to have that child. So when you can take your situation and your child and turn it around and make that choice, like Dr. Natalie loves, to see the positive in it and find those silver linings, you not only have a different experience in your life, but your child gets to. And that's empowering.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's
no, it does. No, it absolutely does, because it is. I mean, I talk a lot about negative self-talk, right? And that comes from someplace too. Sometimes just because we're perfectionists. It comes from somewhere. And that's why I said you chose it the minute that you were pregnant, because the stress, or however we feel about pregnancy, everybody, not just the mom, everybody in the surroundings, that all, of course, affects the child, but also the mom. And, I know we're talking a lot about moms today, but I think it's really important also for others who may not be pregnant, but who are in the vicinity. And that all transfers to the baby. And so then the baby and the mom, it's like that constant battle, constant struggle of, well, can I get out of this? Can I get out of this vicious cycle? I'm not good enough. I'm blind. I have special needs. I have this. I have this. Versus, I love you. You may not be able to see, therefore you're able to hear so much better than others. There's this dance about, like you said, labels, but also about how we feel about ourselves. And I think what you just mentioned is very empowering indeed, because it all starts with, what do you want to give your child? And how do you want to feel? So when it comes to that, whether it was that you then realized your son was going to have a few issues or not, how do you choose to be a victor in that versus saying, oh my God, nothing I can do. Doctor, help me, medicate, nothing I can do. Poor me, poor child, poor siblings. How do you get out of that?
Mm. Well, again, we go back to that C word. It is a choice because we can choose to be taken over by it in our lives. Listen, I haven't always been where I'm at. It's a progression of growth in your life. It's a progression of decisions that you make. It's a progression of awareness, growing your awareness and becoming a consciously aware person of what their role is in your life, what your role is in your life, and how to be, one of the prayers I've always had is, God, help me be the best mom I can be for my kids. Because that's my job. That's one of my main jobs. I was told I couldn't have children 7 years into my marriage, and all of a sudden I'm pregnant with my first daughter. I remember yelling at the infertility doctor because I thought he was crazy, right? I told him he was full.
I love that. Because
So
it goes
he was
to
like, wow, no one's ever yelled at me before. I was like,
but it goes to the diagnosis, right? I mean, very often, whether I should be saying this loud or not, but very often the first diagnosis is not necessarily the right one. We got to do more research when we get diagnosed in something. And so, yes, yeah. And then you were pregnant. You couldn't get pregnant, but guess what? You're pregnant.
And I've had four pregnancies. I lost one baby, and I have 3 children. And so I was a later mom. My first one came at 33, then 36, and then 45. So, I think that, there's that saying, right? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yes.
And sometimes in our lives we go, well, there's just no way I'm ever going to get through this. I have no idea. I mean, I know folks with really challenging and difficult situations with their children or child. And, you wonder, how do they get through it? Well, I think that you've got to have something that you believe in that's bigger than you, that is something that you hold on to, that something is guiding you and giving you hope and direction and having faith. And you have to surround yourself with a good support system. That is super important, whether it's your family or immediate family, relatives, neighbors. That's so important to have that system because, like, for instance, in our house, so my little guy came later, right? Well, I've always looked at it like he's the puzzle piece that kind of put us all together, right?
Yes.
And that it takes all of us to raise him. Like I said after he was born, there were a lot of challenges. I mean, I almost didn't survive the birth and the after of what happened between us. And so at that period of time, there was a great healing that had to happen. And he didn't sleep for the first 2 years of his life. And he didn't know how to swallow. We had to teach him how to swallow. And there were various other things, lots of challenges. And so there were days that were like a blur. And all you're doing is existing. And you have no idea how you're even existing in your life. And I mean, I've been there, and I know that we just have to every day we get up, we have to put one foot in front of the other. And we have to sometimes surrender to faith and guidance in our life. And we have to keep moving forward and never giving up. That's what resiliency is and what empowerment is, and knowing that. And you have to decide for yourself, what do you want? What do you want? Not what the world says or what a diagnosis says. What is it you want? You want a happy, healthy life for your kids.
Yes.
You want to empower them in every way that you can. I mean, I never have treated my son like he had a diagnosis. Never. I never told him, you can't do this because this. Never have I said that to him. Never did I say it to my other 2 girls. Okay. So in his life, he's 9 now, and he's just now asking the questions like, why do I have to go with this person? Why do I have
Right.
to go to speech? Why do I have to go to OT? Well, they're blessings in your life because they are helping you to overcome challenges that you have so you can make them strengths in your life. And one day you won't need that help, but now we take it because we are able to get it for you. And there are children in the world who never get properly diagnosed and they never get the help they need and they fall through the cracks. And it's a complete tragedy because even your typical kid can use extra help a lot of times. So I don't know if this answers the question, but I do think it goes back to a choice that you make, whether it's going to take you down or you're going to thrive and you're going to empower yourself, you're going to empower your kids, you're going to empower others around you. So when we come outside of ourselves and we do something for someone else, then we're empowered. Then we've come from being a victim to a victor.
Right.
So, and I want to segue to a ghostwriting project that I just finished. The book will be out November 4th. It's called She Was Healed, and it's based on the chapter in the Bible of the woman who bled for 12 years. And it's a pastor's wife who her mother-in-law was a famous TV evangelist back in the 80s and 90s. The book is about the things they overcame. Unbelievable stuff. I mean, just stories that just every time I read through, I have chills. And one of the things that Edith Tripp says is that if you are hurting, go out and help the hurt. If you are depressed, go help somebody who's depressed. If you have no money, go give some money to somebody, even if it's $1. If you have a woman you know who's struggling about her children, or if you're struggling with your kids, go help somebody who's struggling with their children, because it brings you outside of yourself so that you can then see a little more clearly, I think, to what your purpose is. Because what is your purpose in the situation that you've been given?
I could talk to you for another hour, but I just realized that we're out of time. So we got to figure out how we can continue this conversation really quickly. How can people best get in touch with you? Because I know there are tons of questions.
Absolutely. Okay, so they can go to my website, www.maryejackson.com. So it's easy. It's my name. And there's a way to contact me there. You can also find me on Facebook, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. I am on I'm on LinkedIn with my name, and I'm also on Instagram, Mary E. Jackson 5, because we are the Jackson 5. So you can find me there. So I'd love for you to follow me. I'd love for you to, if you have questions, please reach out to me. And I have a request. So my girls have just released a single that's on the world and European and international charts, and they are called Sisters J, and so it's with an S, and their song is called Open When, OPENWHEN. To subscribe to their channel on, I know people don't always ask this, but on YouTube, because we're getting their platform going, and the song is about writing letters to people who are away from you, that you're missing, that are missing you, for you to open when you need a new song, open when you're missing me. So it's a heartfelt thing that we need right now.
Beautiful. So. Thank you. And I will put your website also in the description.
Okay.
And then you give me the link again to the YouTube channel. And who knows, maybe I can have your daughters on the show one time. Who knows?
Oh, they'd absolutely love that. They're just beautiful souls. Absolutely.
I can believe it. I can believe it. Thank you so much, Mary. I'm just going to say Mary. Everybody else, get in touch. If you can't find her, find me. And I will see you all next week. All righty. Bye.